Good morning, friends. Hello. Hello to you. Good morning. How are you? Hope you're doing all right today, everybody. Hope things are good. Good morning. Good morning. How are you this morning? Everybody's doing all right. Hey, Kristen. Good morning. Let me know how the sound is this morning. We're still playing around with things. You'd think a couple of years we'd get used to this thing, but everything is always changing. So, hope everybody's doing all right. We had a great weekend. Some goodness. Enjoyed some of the beauty of the weather and the day. It's been amazing. Summer is truly here and truly around. It's after such a long spring. It's really quite a thing. How is everybody? Good morning. Hope you're doing all right. Hey, Irene. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Sounds fine so far. Great. Well, we'll pray it holds up. Good morning, Yvette. Hello, hello. Hello, gang. Great. Glad you're here. Give it a couple more folks coming along. We'll get going. I do truly hope that you're enjoying this season as we get ready for 4th of July coming up this weekend, the big, great kickoff of summer, and this kind of high summer event. And maybe we're going to spend some time this week talking about 4th of July things, maybe-ish, sort of. I don't know. But it being, I think, a beautiful and kind of powerful thing to lift up these days. So we'll be working on that. All right. Good morning, everybody. It is the 28th day of June at 11:11, and welcome. Welcome with you who are here, you who are coming along, you who will find us through the day. Welcome. I hope that this finds you well, and if it doesn't, I hope that being a part of this little journey, being a part of this community, can bring you some wellness in it. And I'm going to turn the air conditioner off. Ta-da! All right. That's, it's the joy of being on a live stream, gang. This is what we get. This is, I'm your guy. So, welcome, Karen. Good morning. Welcome to you. Vicky. Hello, my people. Love it. So glad you're here. All right. I want to actually pick up. Hey, Jennifer. The Shaw family. Hope you're great. I want to pick up where we left off last week. We've been struggling with technical stuff, and so I wanted to try and close the loop on where we left off last week, because it's a good one, as we like to say. So we were speaking about Paul and Paul's journey to the church in Ephesus, and his letter to the church in Ephesus, and this journey of the church in Ephesus, and this corrective letter that he sends them, trying to get them in right relationship, and because they're kind of squabbling and they're kind of struggling, and there's some different oppression and stuff that's going on, and in the 4th chapter he gives this instruction, which is fairly famous, but but I want to read it for you, and that. And so you might hear it, and because I think because here's the thing, this is why I want to come back at this, because this was one of those things for me that I actually didn't like this. It actually really used to gnaw on me. And what I've discovered with Scripture over time is that if you find those scriptures that you just can't cotton with, like just don't know what to do with, and you don't want. But if you spend some time with them and you kind of continue to work on them, the rabbis have a way of saying that when looking at scripture is like looking at a diamond, and so if you think about diamonds as having all these different facets, that part of our work is to turn the gem, turn the diamond, so that we see a new facet. That you think about any beautiful ring or anything that has a stone in it, and when you move the stone and you move the ring, it flashes in new ways and brings new beauty. I think Scripture is exactly that way, that it will do that. And that if we look at it, we first initially are like, ooh, I hate that setting, or I hate that what it's saying. Give it some time and keep turning the stone, keep turning the gem, and it will say something. And this piece that I'm going to read you was like that for me. I didn't care for it initially, and I didn't like it. And so I wanted to, I have ground on it over the years, and I really am actually coming to find that it's actually maybe one of the most powerful pieces of instruction that Paul gives, or it's, he gives all kinds of important instruction, but it's really key. Anyway, a lot of prelude to a little text. Okay, here we go. 4th chapter of Ephesians. We all reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. And then, when we come into the measure of the fullness of Christ, notice he's saying, then we will no longer be infants, tossed back and forth by the waves and blown here and there by every wind of teaching and by the cunning and the craftiness of people in their deceitful scheming. Instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every respect the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ. Speaking the truth in love. Now, I used to think that what that was about is like telling people the truth but being nice about it. But that's actually, I think, it can be that, but that's like saying, the Mona Lisa is a pretty good painting. It's a radical understatement of the understanding of the beauty that's before us. Because remember what this is about: coming into the measure of the fullness of Christ, so that we might grow and mature in the body of Him who is the head, who is Christ. So that we might grow and mature. This is so that we might have, none of us want to get old. None of us want to grow into maturity, blah, blah, blah. But, and this is pretty much true for most folks that I've met, that there is a way in which gaining age also gains joy and gains happiness and gains wisdom. And maybe even more than that, gains some peace in this life about the struggles, about what it is to be and to be us, what it is to be a part of the body of Christ, all of those things, that there's actually comes to be some goodness in it, and the goodness comes to reside in us as the goodness of Christ comes to reside in us, that we mature, that we become a mature part of the body, and not just like a creaky old arthritic elbow, but we become wise and strong and capable and not blown around by everything. And goodness gracious, is there not enough winds blowing on us, or cunning and crafty people trying to get us over to their side, or think good thoughts, bad thoughts, all the think their thoughts. Speaking the truth in love is actually perhaps one of the greatest spiritual disciplines. Now we think about it as like, maybe this is the corrective. We need to speak the truth in love to somebody who's maybe drinking too much or something, like all this. It's an improper application of this. That's actually not what it says. It's taking that text out of context. Speaking the truth in love is really this need for us to take the things that are vital in our heart and in our being and talk them out in the world. So a little over half of you that are going to listen to my voice are what are known as extroverts in this world. There's extroverts and there's introverts. And this is true for you introverts, but it's less true. But for you extroverts, here's the thing. There's a reality that we don't, that people who live with you probably realize this, but you might not realize this. And this is important for you to know, is that when we talk about talking things out, right, which is always a good thing to do, to have somebody to reflect with, and what about this, what about that, like have this mirrored experience. But it's not just that. For extroverts, there is a reality that you don't know what you think until you say it out loud. And if you've really been around people who are wildly extroverted, you'll see this process in action for them. But this is true for everybody, because nobody is 100% an introvert. We're all 80, 40, 60, 30, whatever. We all have a 60, 30. What are the other 10%? So we all have a fraction of introversion, extroversion in us, and so we all contend with this. We all need to know that we can't actually know what we think. We can't actually know what we think unless we say it out loud sometimes. Now, for introverts, they'll often need to spend time alone and kind of cogitate on things, and then the answer will come to them. Now, that's a whole other thing. But there's a body for all of us in whom we need to speak and say things out loud in order to know. And again, you've watched extroverts do this. You've sat with somebody who's wildly extroverted ordering dessert. You watch them like, do I want the cheesecake or the creme brulee? Oh, the creme brulee sounds good. I think I'll have the creme brulee. Like literally, they do not know their own. And we think like, oh, this is just them processing, but it is them processing. But it's them really processing. Like they literally, if you were to like zip tie their mouth shut, or not make it, or perhaps not make it socially acceptable for them to speak of their dessert choice, they literally would not know what they wanted for dessert. Now this is a dumb little example, but I think you can see the implications of this in our spiritual life, or in our life together as a people. If you can't speak freely, and I'm not saying speak freely with everybody on the whole planet, because that's ridiculous in some ways. But if you don't have a venue in which you can speak out loud, say out loud all the things you need to say. If there are venues in which if there is no venue in your life in which you can say all the things you need to say out loud, you don't know what you think about things. And if you don't know what you think, you can't grow. Are you seeing it? Because the thing about thinking something through and coming to a conclusion is that's the place where we're susceptible to become other than we are. These are bad people. Well, let me think about that, and then maybe I'll encounter some of those people, and I'll take into account this data, and then I'm like, oh, well, those people that I attribute with this thing aren't bad, and so we start to work through this process. But this process of thinking has a huge component of it is for us to speak it out loud and to speak the truth in love. And to speak the truth in love is not just to speak to speak it in a nice way, which it's been interpreted that way, but that's not what he's saying. He's saying speaking the truth in love is to speak the truth that comes from the passion of our heart, that comes from the things that matter to us, to not simply talk about tiramisu and creme brulee, but to talk about the things that are deep within us and that are powerful, and the things that would possess us, and the things that would hold us back, and the things that would constrict us, and the things that would bind us, and the things that would overcome that constricting and that binding and the call of God for us. We actually, if you really look at this, there's a real component of our spiritual growth is about speaking ourselves into our maturation into Christ's kingdom. Now, it's not the only thing, and there's we're ogres are like onions. We're complicated people, and we've got lots of layers, and there's a lot going on. But this avenue of the redemptive process of Christ with us is actually deep, deep, deep. It's one of the reasons that negative self-talk is so powerful and so important. How we end up talking to ourselves again and again and again matters, and because whether or not it opens or closes this process of God's maturation with us, God's theosis, us to become like God. That this is God's process with us, to respect the mature body of Him who is the head, that is in Christ. To respect this process. And we got to say the things out loud we need to say. And we just need to say them. We don't need to say them angrily. We don't need to say them meanly, but we need to be able to talk them through. This is why free speech is at the center of, I said we were going to talk a little bit about the American Revolution and kind of 4th of July coming up. This is why free speech is at the center of all of the Bill of Rights. It is the central right talked about in the Bill of Rights. Right out of the First Amendment, right out of the core of it. If right out of the gate, you can free speak, you can speak freely, and if you can, and the government can't stop you. And powers can't stop you. Now, that doesn't mean you are free from the consequences of that speech. That's another thing. But you certainly, if you think that, insult your wife before you go to bed, and think if you're free from the consequences of speech. You don't have a wife. I'm just, I'm just making a joke. But you see what I'm saying. And we see this again and again, that free speech, it is at the essence, not just of, the national debate, the national democracy, our life together as a polis, but it is at the heart of our connection to God. Because it's at the heart of our process of maturing, is to be able to talk things out. Because if we can't speak, we literally can't think. And if we can't think, we can't hold the two opposing ideas in front of us and pick the more heavenly one. Because this is the thing, there are no neutral choices in our life. There's no neutral speech in our life, for that matter. There's nothing neutral in us. We are a jumble of heavenly and hellish impulses that will come in us and through us and to us. And that we have to negotiate those. And the only way to negotiate those is to talk them out. It's not the only way. That's it. Again, I don't want to make too much of this, but it is. But it's so important and it's so central. And I think you can probably see it as it's unfolding. You can see how this works in your life. Is that we've got it that if we're going to step into the measure of fullness of Christ that Christ has for us, we have to speak. We have to be able to speak freely. In love, with the deep things of our heart. Now, you're not going to do that with everybody. You're probably do that with a small group of people. Maybe if you're somebody who's great influences, you'll do it in a public sphere. But really, that's not what this is about. This is about us. Allowing God's process to work out with us. And if we can't speak, if we can't say a thing out loud, we limit God's ability to redeem us from it. Or not even to redeem us, and maybe it's a good thing that we're saying out loud, but there's always a better thing to lead us to the better thing. One of the things we forget about the heavenly life is that after a little while, it's not about like great evil and great good. It's often not that conversation. It's often about good and maybe more good, or a sustainable evil, a sustainable kind of rejection of what's going on, or a safe distance from God's love, so that we can kind of handle the crackle and the pop of the fire. But that the process that God calls us to is not one of safe distances. It is of deep intimacy and great love and incredible maturation and maturity and a strength of spiritual body that is that of Christ, who could take all things, who could redeem all things, who could suffer all things, and who is here to, as my friend Irene loves from the Corinthians, to give us all things. All things are yours. So as we wrap up, I want to show you something. This was a little piece of stone that was given to me by Nancy Costa as just a thank you for some of the ministry journey we've been on, and it is mined right outside of Ephesus. So this was part of the marble that made up that was there to make up the city of Ephesus in its day. And I actually gave a teaching on Ephesus earlier in the year as well, and so it was very providential. I don't know if she knew that, but it was very providential, and it's really an incredible gift. And it says on it this quote from Luke, and so which I want to leave you with today, because I think it brings home this conversation about speaking the truth in love. That God multiplies what you give him. It's from Luke 9:15-17. It's the loaves and fishes story. This kind of God multiplies what we give him, but God redeems and makes whole and makes stronger and makes good the things that we're willing to say. This is, again, not to go into the disciplines again, but this is the power of the confessional, the power of confessing, the power of saying things out loud before God. It's not about a scorecard of the things that we're doing wrong. It's about entering into the conversation with God so that God can bring us into the body of maturity, so that God can magnify and multiply the things of our lives to make them better than we could ever imagine them to be, even in our smallness, even in our fear, to draw us out into the conversation. So friends, my invitation for you today is speak the truth in love. Find somebody in your world to have that conversation with. Talk about the hard things. And I'm not talking about confrontation. That's a whole different thing. It's a whole different thing. I'm talking about the things of your heart that need talking about, that you don't know what to do with, or maybe you do and you're just scared to do it, or that are vexing you, that are so that you're just bursting with, and you just don't know who and how to share it. But to speak freely about the things of the world, about the things of your life, about the things and the logos of your being, the really real of your life. So that as you speak the truth in love, you can think clearly and think properly and think that maybe there is in this thing that I've just said out loud a more heavenly place, a more heavenly way, a more beautiful reality, a deeper, wider, stronger, more mature, and more beautiful life than the one I have right now. That's my hope for you. It really is. It's my prayer for each one of you. I hope today you will find somebody in your life. And if you don't have anybody else, call me up. I love having coffee, and I love talking, and I love listening, and I love hearing people speak the truth in love. All right, peace and grace, my friends. We'll pick it up tomorrow with another 11:11.